Kamloops makes for a nice stopover between Seattle or Vancouver and Jasper. We enjoyed the quirky metal tree art on the river trail and a little bit of doggy heaven at Pioneer Park. Just as Kamloops seems to appear out of nowhere, it disappears just as quickly. It felt like as soon as we crossed the city line, the urban area instantly transformed back to country. Despite being Canada Day and 4th of July weekend, the roads are pretty quiet. The scenery may not be quite as dramatic as the Trans-Canada Highway or the Icefield Parkway, but it still has diverse scenery and plenty to look out. Check out our Seattle to the Canadian Rockies video if you want to see that drive. What do you do on road trips? As a teenager, my mom introduced us to books on tape, and I love how podcasts and audiobooks seem to make these trips fly by. As a kid, my family drove the east coast of the United States several times. My dad was a marathon driver, and on at least one of these trips, picked us up from school, drove all through the night, and much of the next day with nothing but the help of coffee stops. We would play license plate games and listen to the radio. I remember how proud I was when I got to navigate on one of those trips, and how motion sick I got when I tried to do my homework in the back seat. The drive to Jasper's west side is about 4.5 hours, and it takes almost 5 hours to reach the town of Jasper. Unless you plan to leave the highway, there are only limited services along the road, so you may want to plan ahead and stop when you get the opportunity. The town of Jasper is small and a bit touristy, so you may want to stock up on provisions in Kamloops. We learned the hard way that even though some produce items are allowed from the US into Canada, British Columbia has much stricter rules. We gobbled as many cherries as we could at the border before sadly pitching the rest in the bin. Somewhere on the section of drive was where I saw my first bear of the trip, and my first ever swimming bear. It was paddling right along through the current of the river. I've read they are excellent swimmers, including a story of campers finding themselves sharing a much too small island with one, but I guess it's kind of like imagining a bear climbing a tree. Somehow it just doesn't really make sense until you see it. There are plenty of options for side trips, but once you turn on to 16, the Yellowhead Highway, you will pass through a couple of provincial parks, so we held off until there to stop. Check out the links below for more possible stops and info on the route. Rearguard Falls was the first, and the parking is right on the highway, with just a short walk to get to the falls. The waterfall might not be the biggest or the best, but it definitely felt the most intimate, with the walkway bringing us right up to the rushing water. One of the highlights of this route is that it passes through Mount Robson Provincial Park, which is stunning. This place could easily merit a full trip of its own, and we hope to return for a backpacking trip to Berg Lake someday. You can see Glacier and Mount Robson right from the road, and the visitor center is right there too, making it a very convenient spot, even if all you want is a washroom. It was overcast with the chance of thunderstorms, so we stuck to admiring Mount Robson from the visitor center balcony, before heading over to hike a bit of the Overlander Falls trail. These waterfalls and many trails in the area get their name from a group of over 100 colonists in the 1800s that made their way across the country, from Ontario to Kamloops, instead of taking the usual ocean route. Looking at the geography and dense vegetation in this area, it's hard to imagine how they're able to make it. Not long after crossing into Jasper, we saw our first grizzly bear of the trip, followed quickly by a mother black bear with cubs. They were all very cool to watch from the safety of our car, and we joked that we had checked those off our list, and we're now good to see no more bears for the trip. We saw several more, but luckily all from the car. We were traveling with our pup and booked too late to secure accommodations inside the park, so we stayed in Hinton, on the east side of the park. It was a bit of a drive to get to most of the places we wanted to explore, but every day we got to enjoy this stunning drive, with the mist and the clouds combining with the morning and evening light to make a slightly different feel each time. The Yellowhead Highway running through Jasper seems to be greatly underrated. Along the road, we saw the grizzly, bull elk, over half a dozen black bears, including a group of 4 playing in a meadow, and even a herd of bighorn sheep at the park entrance one day. There is also no shortage of stunning lakes and mountains, with countless places to stop and admire the view, and go for a walk or a paddle. We have some guides from our trips in this area linked below, and other useful resources. Thank you for joining us on this adventure. Please help us out by liking and subscribing. Thank you. Happy exploring.